So now let's go ahead and write our own program to ask the user, well, to get from the user what word they want to look up through a URL parameter, and then go to this Glossby API and fetch the definitions of the word that we've just requested. So let's start by doing what we already know how to do, which is to get from a URL parameter the word that the user wants to look up. And we're going to do this just like they did before. I created a new empty program. We'll go delete this and start from scratch. We will get the word. I'll assign it into a local variable word, self.request.get word. So that's all we have to do to get the word parameter. In this case, we really need the word. So we'll say if word, we're going to do something. If we didn't get a word, well, we can't do anything because that's what this program is all about. So why don't we just let the user know that they really do need to give us a word. We'll just write out some usage information. Self.response.write usage is ... whatever the URL is, question mark word equals, and then word. Now, we're actually writing HTML here, and even though we haven't really talked about HTML, you may know that HTML is a very simple textual markup language that has things in tags, and a tag is a word inside of angle brackets. So we can't actually write an angle bracket, or the HTML will interpret this as a tag. So we actually have to use a special thing to write angle brackets, and you do that with special ampersand symbols. You say ampersand GT semicolon. That's how you write a greater than sign in HTML. Actually, I guess we want a less than sign. And we'll write this with greater than sign. Alright, so let's go ahead and just test this program before we've even done anything. I think I've got this, it's currently running on port 8080. So we'll go to our web browser and go to localhost 8080 without specifying a parameter, and sure enough, good. It tells us, nope, you need to specify a word. Alright, so let's specify a word. We've got the word, and so now what we need to do is create a URL with that word. So let's go ahead and make a local variable with our URL. We actually should go ahead and take that URL that we had already made because it was a good one. Right, here was this example that I had typed in manually. So the URL we want to create is about like that, right? But instead of using the fixed word lugubrious, we want to use the word that we just typed in. So we'll just construct this, that part, plus the local variable word, plus the rest of it. Good. Here's our URL, and we're ready to request it. Now, in order to request the URL, we are going to use a new package that's built into Google App Engine. There's actually standard Python ways, but we'll use the Google App Engine way. And it is in a package called Google.AppEngine API. And the name of the class is URL fetch. And we can go ahead and use this by saying, let's see if I get this right, result equals URL fetch dot fetch, and we give it the URL, and that's it. So this is asynchronous fetching, which means that our program is going to sit and wait until this API returns the result. There are also ways to do asynchronous fetching where it will return right away and you can do other things and you'll get a callback when the data comes in. But this is good enough for now. And now what we can do is go ahead and look at that result. And let's start by saying, did the result succeed? HTML, when accessed over HTTP, returns standard status codes, which lets you know if the HTTP request succeeded. And we're going to check for 200, which is the status code of success. That's the only thing we care about right now. If it succeeded, then let's go ahead and get the content. The content is stored in result.content. Let's just put that into, say, a little local variable called data string. And let's write that out. Self.response.write data string. This is going to be in JSON format, so it'll print out JSON, and we will see if this thing runs. Let's go ahead now into our web browser, go back to localhost, give it a word, question mark, word equals lugubrious. Cross your fingers. Well, it didn't work. So let's use this as an opportunity to look at why it didn't work. The first thing you can do is look at your web browser console and see if we got an error over here. We didn't. It just didn't return anything. Fine. The next thing we can do is go to our Google App Engine launcher and look at our logs, and this will tell us if we got an error, and we did, and it turned out we actually had a syntax error in line 18. And it's because the reason that we had a problem is because I didn't actually type the right thing. So that all went away. It's working much better. Let's try again. And look at that. Our program correctly interpreted lugubrious, went to the server at Glossby, got the JSON back, printed it, returned it, and our extension displayed the results in a pretty format. And now we've got this, and we can now go ahead and interpret the results of this data. We're actually not too far from being done here. Even though we've just got the JSON, we're ready to go interpret the JSON. So the first thing we need to do is go into our Python program, and when we get this data string, this is just a string, we need to parse this string and turn it into a Python data structure with lists and dictionaries. And just like we had the dump s method for generating JSON, turns out if we go ahead and import the JSON library, there's an opposite function called load_s. So I call that data string because we're going to take that data string and parse it and turn it into data by calling JSON.load_s and giving it the string that we fetched. Alright, so now we have data that we can do something with. So data is going to be in this content, but now in Python form. So it's going to be a dictionary with a bunch of things. So let's get the value of the key TUC. I don't even know what TUC means. It's probably in the documentation, but I didn't read that far. So we can say data of TUC, because that's how we access string TUC, because that's how we access the value, look up a key in a dictionary. Okay, remember we had said before that TUC its value is a list of things, but all of this is the 0th element of the list. So let's just go ahead and get that 0th element of the list, and that is going to give us this whole thing. So let's just store that maybe in a local variable called TUC. And now this TUC is a dictionary, and so from the dictionary we want to access the key of meanings. So we'll say TUC of meanings. Right? That looks up the key meanings in TUC, and that again is a list. In this case, we want all of the elements of the list because those are the definitions. So we'll store that in a variable called meanings, and we can iterate over that list. For meaning in meanings, let's go ahead and well, actually we can't print those out yet. Each of those things is a dictionary, and we'll have to look up the text. So meaning of text, and each of those is a definition. So let's store that in a local variable called definition, and we can print that out. Self.response.write definition. We don't need this thing anymore. This is going to be really ugly, but with any luck it actually should give us the content of what we're looking for. Let's save this in case we made a mistake, and I'll go run it again in another tab, but we can go back to the original one in case we want to look up that JSON again. Look at this, and look at I'm very happy we actually wrote this program correctly. Right, the first definition was gloomy, the second definition was gloomy, mournful, or dismal, and that is actually here. It's just really ugly. It all got concatenated together. So the last thing we need to do is to do a little bit of HTML.